Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in the morning. I know it's very, very hard after the great party. So let's give to us a round of applause because we're the most tough guys. Woo! Thank you for very much for coming. I hope you enjoy this show. And today's day, first we start with a panel in the Developer Survival Guide. We have this panel almost every conference. And I would like to welcome Alexey Davydov, who is our host of this panel. So let's welcome him.
Thank you for coming. Thanks to our participants for coming as well. Let me introduce these indie guys. First is Wolf Lang from THREAKS, please. Matthias Dittrich, also known as Ditto, and while we have two Matthias today, I will call him just Ditto, if you allow, please. And one more Matthias, Niebergall, okay? Okay, from Daedalic, yep. Well, Daedalic maybe is not that indie company, but still it would be interesting to talk from this point of view. It would be very interesting for several topics. And the last our guest is Brjann, Sigurgeirsson. Sorry for that, man. It's not that easy. Yeah, please. Okay, my first topic is just to warm up a little bit. What do you think about working in some game dev company before making your own indie game? Is it necessary? Maybe from several specialties, for programmer or for designer. What do you think about it? Should you work somewhere before making your own game or not? Please, you can start from. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. So I think that might not be totally necessary, but I think it's very good that you work on games before you go into a game company. So basically, I think if you sort of find out really early on if you're into game development or not. So when you're a kid, you should just start doing your stuff. And if you're really good at it, then chances are that you'll get together with a few friends and start doing it. And in the best of worlds, you start a company with those friends, and then you become rich and famous. So I think, yeah, maybe it's not necessary to sort of hone your skills in another game company before starting your own.
Okay. What do you think about it?
Yeah, agree with that. But I think it could help to improve your skills and the knowledge of how it works. Given the fact that you work maybe in a bigger company with many years of experience, it can certainly help you understanding how it is to develop games and what it means to bring a game out. And
okay, if yes, how many years? If yes, if you should work there, what do you think? 2, 5?
I don't know. I won't specify on that, but just to get a certain understanding of how everything works, I think.
Okay, thank you. Ditto, what do you think?
Hey. I don't think you need that at all. Kind of depending on what you want to do later on. I think like what kind of games you want to make when you actually start your company. It could be good to have like, in certain areas it would be very good to have the experience to make what you're trying to make. Like if you're trying to make something more AAA kind of stylish, you know, like it would probably be good to have that kind of experience, but otherwise I think it might even be a advantage to not have that like preset way of thinking from a company, and I say that because that's exactly where I am. But you obviously need the experience and having made games for a long time before you go into the whole starting a company. But not necessarily working for another company, you know?
Wolf, what do you think?
So I think it can actually save you some time to go to a company and not necessarily needing to make all the mistakes that you make while developing games and running a company and trying to be a good developer, trying to sell your products, trying to go on shows, because like I think my first 4 years of my career was just a big trial and error. And I mean, of course it still is, right? I make stupid stuff all the time, but the good stuff is always a little bit better, so I'm allowed to stay in my job, hopefully. But the point is, like, so that took me 4 years, and what happened is we have a very distinct way of designing and distributing and marketing games at THREAKS, which fits very much to our people. And we needed to find out that method with a lot of fighting and arguing and so on, but now it fits to ourselves. So, and if you maybe work or like, so you're an unwritten leaf and you go into the industry and you go to a company that is not 100% your style, it could be the longer you stay there, you think this is the way people should do things. And just like with every company, you know, it was just because people do it now like this, it doesn't mean it's the optimal way. So that could be, depending on your personality, that you should maybe take half a year or a year that you work inside a company. Like I envy like everybody, since I was coming straight from university and then started THREAKS together with some of my friends, and I've never worked in a game company. I worked in an advertising company, I was a paramedic, I delivered pizza, I was doing some Japanese translation jobs for HP printer company. I was also, there was one, oh yeah, right, I worked in an advertising company. So I did like jobs, which are not that similar, but in a way also similar. The paramedic stuff especially really helps. But I mean, at the same time, I had no idea of the game industry, and so I think it was really, really good that it takes longer time, way, way longer time, but afterwards you have a very more individual view of what you want to do with your company. Sorry that I took 4 times what everybody else said. I think I need some more Coca-Cola.
It's okay. So if I can summarize it, you can maybe gain a lot of experience in some company, but there is a dangerous thing that you can lose maybe your style or not cultivate it that time. While indie is always about something unusual, maybe. So it's one of the points, not to work somewhere, but experience is still very good. What do you think about platforms? Of course, after the last presentation of Apple, that Apple TV, and what do you think about this topic, for example? Maybe Steam, maybe mobiles, maybe consoles, maybe Apple TV, and some Android analogs. What do you think? What is the most interesting for indies today? Yeah, Wolf, please.
Just so we like turn the round from the other side up now.
It's and like stack, right?
And I make it extremely short. Actually, it doesn't matter on which platform you are, because the whole market is totally oversaturated. There are too many good games, there are too many good developers, and there are too little consumers to buy them all. So basically, it's a game of luck, because each platform is changing. Like if you say, oh look, somebody sold a real good game on 3DS, and you go there after 3 months, the market might already be done. The same with Steam, the same with Apple. Like THREAKS are notoriously known for always be 2 months too late on all the good platforms and failing with sales. We're really good at that. So actually, you know, at some point I really gave up thinking about what is the right strategy to do stuff, because you get lucky or you don't get lucky, but as long as you're flexible and see what your game fits best on the platform, then you will eventually be successful, I guess. Yeah.
So your advice is starting from the game and then think about platforms, right?
Yeah, and I think nowadays what really helps to be flexible as an indie studio with engines like Unity and Unreal. I mean, Beat Buddy, right? Is like it came to PC, to Wii U, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, some Intel Touch camera stuff, iPad, Android. 3DS maybe as well, so right. So, I mean, we can't afford to be on to go for one platform, because otherwise, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you another question. What's your next game will be focused on firstly? On what?
So we're actually working on 5 games for 5 different genres, and 8 different platforms, all the way from VR to PC, Android, 3DS, and it's really just about what sticks.
I see. So it's about
shotgun approach, I guess. Yeah.
You're trying to diversificate risks, right? To not to put all eggs in one bag. I see. Okay, Ditto, what do you think about platforms?
Well, yeah, kind of like if you can be on all of them, then of course that's the best one. But like, it's not so much that one platform is better. It's more trying to find the one that fits the game you're making. Kind of so like, yeah, I don't know, like try and find the one that is good, well suited for the game you're making, and not think so much about which one is the good platform. And that's kind of hard to generalize, but I think that's something you should try to find a feel for the game you're making, you know.
Yeah, but from the indie point of view, there are some strong sides of indies. Right, it's like experiments, it's like some unusual things, and from this point of view, maybe VR right now, maybe it will be the next big thing someday, and right now it's the right moment to start making something there. What do you think?
Well, since it is about experimentation, it's very hard to pinpoint like what's the thing you should be making right now. Like it's all about what you have the possibility to work with. Like VR seems to be pretty like in the fray right now, and so do that, I guess. But you know, like.
Okay, what's your next game will be about? On what platform?
PC and PlayStation.
PlayStation.
Yeah. And you know, it's kind of a exploration, almost platformer. Which is kind of artsy, kind of like colorful, and fits into the whole like ecosystem on the PlayStation.
I see. What do you think about PlayStation from the indie point of view? Is it easier today to work with PlayStation?
Like, I'd say they're pretty much on the same level as everyone else, aren't they? Like as long as you get the connection with them, that can kind of work out. Like.
I see. You always have to work, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Matthias, what do you think? What did Daedalic think about it, or you personally?
Yeah, it's a little bit different with us because we're working on several games by the same time in more than one team, of course. So I think we're having like 4 different teams working independently on their project at the moment. Yeah, we of course try to be on as many platforms as possible. So coming from the PC market, of course, we're trying to be and stay there, of course, and to perform good. But of course, as it's more moving to consoles, we of course try to bring our games to the console market as we try with the mobile market. Just yesterday, Deponia, an adventure game from us, was released on iOS. So, yeah.
I think it depends on genres, because adventure games are playing very good on touchscreen, on iOS platform, on iPad or something like that, and maybe not that good on consoles. But what do you think about some future? Do you have some projects, some experiments in your company, working like indies, like making some labs experiments with VR, maybe?
Not yet with VR. I think it's a little bit tricky with VR at the moment because there are so many different classes where you can develop for and so many different aspects, and there's not really a market yet. I think in the end of the year or the beginning of next year it will be clear how the market will look like, or whether there will be a market. Maybe in 1 year we're not talking about VR anymore. I don't know, can be. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit uncertain how that will come out, and which one will be the biggest one out there. Will it be the Oculus or Morpheus or whatever? So I think it's tricky, and I wouldn't put my money on on either of these, so yeah.
Okay, so we will see in a year. Okay. Brjann?
Yeah, I was you mentioned something that I think is important, and it's that some games fit some platforms better than others.
Of course.
It's not only about the platforms, it's also about the geographical markets. Like Eastern Europe certain games work really well, etc. And then in Sweden, no games work, and so on. So, but there was a thing you said, Wolf, actually, about luck, a game of luck, and I actually think luck is not a coincidence. If you decide to just make your games as fantastic as they can be, I mean, because one of the constraints for indie developers is obviously resources and money, and it's sometimes really hard to take it all the way to the finishing line, where you say that, okay, we have to release the game now because we're running out of money, and it's moral in the team is just, it's in the basement right now. If we don't release it now, the game is not going to come out. It's something that indie developers need to discuss among themselves from the start, that we have to take those jobs at McDonald's for a while to be able to to get the game where it's supposed to be, not that we really want to release it at this specific time. So that's the most important thing. Then what I mean is, if a game is fabulous enough, it doesn't really matter which platform it's coming out for. It deserves success on all platforms. And that's something that I'm a big advocate for, is just target as many platforms as possible, but make sure that your game is really up to it.
Thank you. Nice point. Okay. The next thing is, the next point is actually going from this one. Then you're planning your next game. What things you're thinking of? How are you planning the process, the pipeline, or how you make a decision? Well, I have several concepts, I have several prototypes, and which one should be picked? How you decide? Yeah, please.
Okay. It's a little bit different with us as well.
Of course.
Because Daedalic, coming from a very narrative-driven approach of developing games, so mostly in the beginning there we have the author and the writer of the games thinking about which story they want to tell, or pitching a cool next adventure idea, and then we try to make that, or we're just at the moment we're working on an adventure game about the Pillars of the Earth, novel from Ken Follett. And there we were lucky enough to get this license in order to make this game, and so it evolved from there. So we were able to make an adventure game about that, and why not do that? So
So you're good in one genre, like adventure games, and you're doing what you doing the best, right? Something like that. Or what about different features? How you decide what is worth? Are you making playtests inside the company, or you're making some internal game jams within Daedalic, something like that? What is the concept proof process?
We also do that. We already did a game jam internally and tried several different things there. Sometimes we do also prototyping for our next adventure games, about the puzzles and the riddles you have to solve. But we're not only developing adventure games, we also did a turn-based strategy game, but that's also narrative-driven. So that's somehow the narrative which connects all of our games. And but for a turn-based strategy game, you of course have to prototype more and have to test out more, and it's more about the game mechanics than the story.
Balance and all that stuff. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ditto, what do you think about, from the indie point of view, how you decide?
Like I game jam a lot. So whenever I'm in a jam, I just make something, and usually something comes out of that, and that's usually my process. Like to begin with, if it's fun to work on, that's a good start. Like if by the end of the jam I'm not tired of the game that I'm working on, that's a good start. And then like you hope to get feedback on the game that you're working on. And if the feedback is good, then you might know that, okay, this might be something to continue developing on. And if you make like one new prototype a month, then by the time your big project is done, then you're always going to have something that like, okay, this, since like it's a jam and you spent 2 days on it, you didn't really spend that much, you didn't lose that much time on it, and at least you have the core of the game, and you have some feedback on that, and you know kind of, well, you don't know, but you have a sense if it will work. So I don't know, like I guess I kind of the shotgun approach there as well. Like I make as many prototypes as I can, and then I see the feedback that comes in on each prototype, and like try to pick the one that works best, I guess. Yeah, so that's kind of how I started with Planeter. Like I made it for the Global Game Jam, and you had the public come in and play test the games as we were developing them. And I could see like the line of kids lining up to play my game, and that was like, at that point I realized like, okay, this is actually, I have something here, and it's really fun to work on as well, so I might just, well, continue working on this, right? So yeah.
Well, looking at your game, sorry, one more question. Looking at your game, I think that you're experimenting with art, with visual a lot. And what do you think is more important, mechanics, art, or maybe some sound, music, some?
No, for me it's about the mechanics. Like, when I play games, I usually don't really see the art until 10 hours in, because the first thing is like, is it fun to play? Does the mechanics feel good in my hands? So that's absolutely the first thing I try to think about. And then the art in my game, usually I try to make it work, and I try to make I try to get the job done, but not necessarily as high fidelity or as like as well as I can, I guess. So like, I try to focus on the mechanics. Like, if the game is fun to play, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, as long as it's like aesthetically pleasing. So it's absolutely about the mechanics. Okay,
I see. So there is the approach, then prototyping shouldn't consist any graphics, any production graphics.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's about presentation as well. Like I have a bunch of techniques to make my jam games look okay-ish for 48 hours of work, you know? But like, so you have the mechanic, which is super important. Like, if the game feels good, then you can kind of slap some art on top of that, and it will work. As long as you have the aesthetical consistency on the whole thing. Like, I mean, there's a lot of games that look like crap, but they do it in a way that like, the game looks good, but it looks like crap. And there's a lot of games that can pull that off. Like Hotline Miami looks like crap, but it does so in a good way.
On screenshots maybe, but in motion it becomes fabulous.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And as long as like, so the crap look of Hotline Miami totally fits together with the emotion that it gives you when you play it, right? And if you can tie those together, then you don't have to be like good at making art. You can kind of slap it together really quickly, as long as you find the emotional or like the feel of the game, and then tie that into your crappy art. Then you can kind of make it work, even though it's a jam. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Wolf, what do you think? We have story, we have art. What for you is the most?
So I mean, this is what I said before about finding out your own way, what your company stands for, and what you, for a developer, want to achieve. I think, like, emotion is definitely an important point. For me, it's always the mechanics, that you come from a strong mechanic. But the problem is also like, having a strong mechanic is cool, and if the game basically designs itself because it's so innovative. But then the other thing is, like, if you go to trade shows and stuff and see people playing it and they're not smiling, then yeah, your mechanic is super clever, but your game sucks. So, and then you have a problem. So basically there's a bunch of criteria for us that we take a look. So is the game innovative? Does it fit to THREAKS? So for example, if we do a simulator game about how changing diapers. I mean, it could be very, very crazy, and we could have great arts on that and make it very realistic, but very likely we're not going to be able to represent it very good. Also then, how long is the game going to be developed? So like, of course, you can have an amazing idea, but it takes 3 years and 1 million, 2 billion, whatever dollars to develop it. It might be a bit complicated, and so on. So basically, over the years, we have like different criteria on how to judge a game. So our biggest project is Retro Invasion with another 12 months of development. Our smallest project is a 3DS title, it might be 3 to 4 months. So, but our goal is to develop games and release games, right? So, and we had this round to figure out what games do we do next. And we were basically sitting down. It was very, very German because everybody kind of, it was super German now that I think about it. So we were just sitting down and there was this Excel chart. Shit. And then everybody, and there were like, I think 33 ideas, sometimes just a name of a game, sometimes a full-blown concept. Like, I mean, one of the games was the idea, how would it be to make a golf game where everything explodes around you? So you would basically, it's called pudding panic. And you basically need to calm down when everything explodes, or you're inside a whorehouse where there's a big mafia shootout or something. So, and that sounded like a fun idea when we were super drunk that one night, but it didn't made it to the top 10. So, but you know, it's still on the list. And basically what we did, we were sitting down with all THREAKS, and everybody was one ambassador of one of those game ideas. So we had like, I don't know, 1 minute, 2 minutes to explain why he thinks that game is cool, and trying to bring all his points down. And then everybody could judge from 1 to 10 and say, okay, that is like super crap, or this is like super nice. And then basically it was really, really fun because you could really see by saying, okay, I give that a 3, a 5, a 6, a 7. And in the end it was, so we wouldn't show like how much points each game would get, and there were so many numbers on it that you couldn't see, okay, so if I want to have this game, I need to vote a 10 now. So everybody behaved fair, and then in the end, I think it was Retro Invasion from all the 33 games, and then another game that we're also working on called All I Have Is Time. And they work pretty well, and so we try to do that regularly, like once something changes or a mechanic doesn't work out, that we sit down and just evaluate our new ideas and say, okay, if that game fails, what is our... So we always try to do the top 10 a little bit, the top 5, sorry. The top 5 a little bit, and this is how we decide to do our next project. Yeah.
Nice, very German, you're right. Okay.
That's really good. I want to play that diaper changing game one day.
VR shit, yeah. Yeah, that's really VR shit. Sorry.
So, yeah, thanks for saying that about game jams, because I think it's really important. It's something that is cheap and fun and brings you together with a lot of intelligent people. Has anyone in here heard about a game called Goat Simulator? Hand up. Yeah. So Goat Simulator from Coffee Stain Studios in Sweden was actually the product of a game jam. They, I think they were making a first-person shooter.
Sanctum.
Yeah, Sanctum, exactly.
1, Sanctum 2, yeah.
Very good. Sanctum 1 and 2. And Sanctum 2 wasn't doing very well. So, but they had sort of put in place that every Friday afternoon, at least, they would sort of sit down and game jam a little bit. And Goat Simulator was one of those products. It's really interesting because Coffee Stain wasn't even sure that they were going to release Goat Simulator. Some of the guys there thought it was just too stupid. And, well, it is too stupid, but that's why it works. Nobody's going to be able to copy that, right? Like, make Pig Simulator. It's not going to be fun. So I think game jams are really, really important if you can have like the discipline for it. Then the way we do it at Image and Form, we it's basically all a matter of lunch hours. We sit down and then we're always talking about games, and then someone says, wouldn't it be cool if? And that sort of sets off an idea. And it's a lot of ideas, like you guys, you come up with tons of ideas, and it always starts like that. Wouldn't it be cool if? And then you notice if something sticks with people. And if it sticks hard enough, then it becomes a game design document. We tend to start that way before prototyping, actually. And then we just spend forever making one game. So yeah, forever.
But I think that's actually pretty interesting, because like I totally also agree to the concept of game jam, but also from another point of view, because so like I think people at your company are very happy. This is why they work for you. So, and like to keep people happy and to keep like people excited for their work, is always important to have like a always check the status quo of what the company wants and what they stand for. And so this is like a good tool to have game jams and to always like ask, so this game that we work on since 2 years that nobody actually likes, and maybe the market has changed or whatever. Just like with Coffee Stain Studio. I mean, Sanctum was awesome, but you know, I know Armin as well, and I know they've been like, I've been Skyping with him after Sanctum 2, because we had the same marketing partner. And the point was actually, they were saying, yeah, okay, we actually moved to the next project. I don't actually know what that's going to be, but you know, it turned out to be the Goat Simulator game, and that was at that point the status quo of Coffee Stain Studio and the status, and it's really, really cool to be flexible. If somebody has a cool idea and the whole team feels like, shit, we have to do this game right now, this is what we want to do, then you keep people entertained, excited, and this is what they can get at an indie company. Because if you're at a large company where you might get better money and you know, when you go home and that type of stuff, you cannot always do what you want. And if you have those tools, you make sure that you hear from the people that work on your team that gave you your trust, what they want, and make sure that they can work the best way possible in your company. So I think also from that perspective, it's a really cool tool to be, you know, like able that everybody can contribute over this tool of a game jam, or over lunch, or it's a lot of beers or whatever.
Okay, thank you. While you've started to talk about game jams, I have one more point about this. From the indie survival point of view, let's imagine the studio with struggle for life, right? And from this point of view, game jams. Are there, what practical use, let's be Germans a little bit, what practical use you can take from game jams? Why should you participate if you need, I don't know, money for tomorrow? Why should you spend one more weekend for game jam? What can you get from it?
Well, I think what you get is creativity, or at least a channel for creativity. Like Wolf was saying, if you're sitting working on a game for a very long time, that game might be really exciting, but when that game has been on your screen for, you know, like over a year or something, it's just a relief to do something else. So I think it's just good to blow off steam. I hope that didn't sound offensive, but yeah, it's yeah, to do something else. I think it's really important. It's like big companies, they take their employees on they go and for go-karting or something like that. Game companies, we can sort of stay in the same place and do something really, really different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also very important. If you work on something for a long time, then you have the like the way I make my games are kind of sporadic. I like feel like adding something, so I do it for the day. But if you work on the same game for a while, those ideas start coming like more and more far apart, like more and more seldom. So if you break that up with the game jam, you will have like a clean slate. So you will have no preconceptions about what the game you're going to make this weekend is going to be about. So you might just go crazy and experiment as much as you want. And every once in a while you find some really cool thing in that little game that you can then extract and put in the game you're working on right now, right? That you wouldn't find because you're like so molded into the type of game you're making or whatever, that you wouldn't come up with that idea that will perfectly fit the game you're working on, but you wouldn't come up with it because it's like you're in the mindset of, now I'm working on Planetary, which is supposed to be this. So it's very good to get that break and think about something else, and then like, oh man, that's a really cool feature. I'm going to take that and put it in the game, you know?
Because there is a point of view, and there is statistics shows that very little % of games participating or coming out from game jams are going in production and going to be released, like Titan Souls or Party Hard, by the way. So why should you participate? To get motivation, to get new ideas, to get new features, to refresh yourself a little bit?
All of the above.
Okay.
Like yeah, all of the above.
I see. Wolf, what do you think?
I was actually want to say something before. There was this thing called Game Jam, which is like, it was always around more or less, but I think the last 3 years that is like a thing or something. But I like if you want to read more about that, there's a super cool article on Gamma Sutra about the Cabal method from Valve, and how they saved Half-Life 1 from becoming Half-Life 1 and not a cheap-ass Duke Nukem 3D, and that was from 1996. So it's actually been always a tool that is around to get, to make sure the status quo of your game, right? Like either if you check out features that you can sort out really, really early, or actually implement to make sure that the game is more fun, or just in general to make sure that the team is working on the product they love and the best possible game, and not that just somebody says, I have this idea and I'm the boss of the company, so we have to do that. And I go, oh, that's a shitty idea. How do I tell him? But he's also paying me money. But actually what I want to say is, I think the weirdest thing for an indie developer is like, okay, I have to be 3 times as efficient as a normal game company in order to survive. So I have to work my ass off, 60 hours a week, weekends, and so on. So where do you find the time to actually sit down and say, I'm gonna empty my brain from all the, how do I pay my rent, how do I do this, how do I do that, and now I'm gonna sit down, have, I don't know, like a glass of water, a glass of Coca-Cola, a glass of Red Bull, a glass of Jägermeister, whatever helps, and then say, now I'm going to think about something very creative for 24 hours. That's really, really hard to implement that in the rhythm of your company, because there's always something you can do. Like there's always something you can do. So I think that's actually the most difficult part, to make sure you don't feel bad about wasting your time developing, like game jamming games. And like, we actually still haven't found the right method or tool to do that. I mean, of course, we could say, okay, it's Google Friday and we just work on whatever we want. Yeah, but then our company will very likely be dead in 2 or 3 months because we're not holding up our deadlines. So it's really, really hard. So I think like game jams, where you can actually socialize with people and learn something about the industry and exchange, and then sit down working at a game, might be a good tool, but I still haven't figured that out. So maybe you guys have an idea how you implement a creative process inside like tight, I need to survive mode. Yeah, I'm very curious for that actually.
Think I'm going to give that away? No. What we do is just we talk very much in the office. I mean, a lot of I think we spend an unusual amount of time not in front of the computers. We sit and talk stuff through, not necessarily just bullshit, you know, but not necessarily also like total production things the whole time. It's like ideas high and low for the current game is usually the topic. But it means that you sort of sit and you get to be creative, because I totally understand that thing with not keeping up with the production schedule if you take 1 day off per week to do game jams. I think at Image and Form, it's like the people who want to be at game jams, they sort of go in their own time to that. And if they need to take an extra day off afterwards because they're so tired, I think somehow it pays off, because the day after sleeping for 24 hours, they come back really refreshed and energized from game jamming. But I would say creatively, it's most of what we do is we discuss all kinds of ideas the whole time, and we try not to be changed in front of the computer. I think it actually makes good sense. And also, I should say that, like for example, with SteamWorld Heist now, I'm not a part of that development anymore. I was in the very beginning in those lunch break discussions. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if this and blah blah blah, and it should do this, and only setting like the financial ramifications. That's where I'm involved. I think if the boss comes in and says, and yes, there needs to be a purple hippo in this game because my kids love that, then you ruin everyone's vision of it, because if the boss says something, you sort of have to deal with that somehow, and I think it's good not to sort of dabble in it.
Good. Matthias? Can you add something?
Yeah, I would also be curious about the question how you put that into your time schedule to go to more game jams often. I mean, until last year I lived in Berlin, and there you nearly had the chance every month to go on any game jam, because there's several organizations in Berlin organizing game jams, mini jams, game design workshops, stuff like that. And yeah, so if you don't do it or if you can't make it this month, do it the next month. There were several opportunities, and yeah, I think it's cool to take all the opportunities if you can afford the time, because for me, game jams are very, very cool, and it's, I think, the most and the best way of creating new ideas and to stay creative in what you're doing, or even trying out different things. When you're an artist in your regular job life during the week, you can try out coding or sound at a game jam because you are interested in that, and then you just go to the game jam and try it out, and maybe you find new skills on yourself, which you want to try out on the next project or stuff like that. I don't know.
Like one tool that worked out pretty well for us to justify game jams is basically to have a... Okay, so I mean, a game jam always has a topic. Also, the topic can be there's no topic, but you know, like most of the time, just sit there and like it's about what would you do riding on a camel in the desert? No, that would not be a good topic. But what would you do on a rainy day? That would also not be a good topic. Let's say autumn, or like party hard. No, that's already a game that's been done. So anyways, so there's always a topic, right? And I think at THREAKS we only had 3 game jams in the last 6 years that were not with any real purpose, but we did like 12 or 14 prototypes, and they were always like, okay, so Intel is doing this real cool stuff with real sense technology, and you can win 10,000 euros or win whatever. So why don't we brainstorm for that idea for one day and see if we can do a prototype that we can send to the competition, and or like win an award for this or win an award for that. Do something like that, and I think this is how you can justify creativity, but at the same time with doing business development in that type of field. And we did it with quite a lot of smaller titles or games that maybe will never be seen because they didn't get any funding or didn't get any support. And then also after we, you know, like put the great idea to paper and made it playable, it's like, oh, this is really crap. So, but then it was good. Then it was out of our system. So I think this is how we were able to justify doing some creative prototypes. But now we actually cut ourselves some slack that we also sometimes, if somebody's really hung over and he's not able to work or something, okay, so the only thing we can take him for good use today is if we just don't do anything today and do a game jam. So that's sometimes what we do, not that often, and it's not always me. So yeah, this is like, but you know, I think that comes after time. So like 3 or 2 years ago, we would have never done it. We would have never taken the time. Okay, we don't work for one day, we do a game jam. But now we see things a bit more relaxed because it's investion of your time. It might be your next project where you make your big hit or whatever you do with that. So.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you guys. One more and the last topic is where I've talked about creativity, about a lot of this art and music and stories that issues. And what about money? Okay, let's imagine some studio that is starting its first game maybe. What do you think? There, from what source money should go from? Is it McDonald's job, or is it some funds, maybe European funds? Maybe you can advise something, or stuff like you know, Epic gives some money for Unreal Engine games right now. What do you think about it? Is it strict your freedoms as indie developers' freedom, or is it good stuff to start from all this funding?
I think you should try as many things as possible to get the money, because that's basically the essential what you need as a company to do your games. Whether it's be a funding or investor or a rich grandfather or maybe a publisher or whatever, I think it's good to try as many things there as possible in order to get the budget together for your game you want to make, and not only for the budget of the game, but also for running your company.
Thank you. Ditto, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, as an indie survival guy, do whatever it takes, right?
Okay, in your case, what was the source of money for your first game?
Nothing. Like, I was like the game I'm working on right now. I won a competition for the concept of the game. So it was like a concept challenge, and I won a bit of money from that. And to so the tied to that money is that I start a company in an incubator in Sweden. So then I moved to another city and started a company in an incubator to get the money and to also have help from the incubator, right? And that's kind of part of my, like, do whatever it takes. Like, if it takes moving to another city and then collecting money from whatever thing you can to survive, right? You do that because you need to have the money to survive and eat and stuff. So yeah, like, whatever it takes.
I see. Thank you. Wolf?
So I think that money is a two-sided sword. Basically a long discussion with some friends here at DevCamp about it, and I can only talk about the German perspective, right? Every country has their different state funds or investor situation and so on. So for example, I know in Finland there's a lot of people investing like venture capital-wise, and in Germany it's basically impossible. To get somebody who actually knows the industry to give you money. Like, some people might give you money, but they are looking for that business model, whatever, but they're not going to really invest into your game. And the point is like, so it's always about, okay, you get money for certain funds, and all the funds that we have in Germany, for example, games like Goat Simulator would have never been done, because it's like, so this game, so will goats get hurt, and why is the goat a whale now? Did the whale actually kill people? Why do you jump from a building? That's not educational at all. Like, our taxpayers will, you know, like next year I'm not going to sit in the parliament, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, this is actually good for them, but that's not good for you and not good for your game idea. So actually, the earlier you take money for your game, the very likely it's going to be a crappy title. And so that's kind of like the Silicon Valley idea about bootstrapping stuff. That has another reason. It's more about making your product as valuable as possible to lose as little shares as possible to potential investors. So you try to eat McDonald's, noodles, deliver pizzas, whatever, as long as possible until you have a proof that the product, your game, is actually good. So I think like money is extremely important at some point to make sure that your team is sticking together, because there's always unusual situation. Let's say somebody's father died, you have an accident, you have this or that, where you cannot live the rock and roll indie lifestyle and don't have any money at all. So, and then maybe your best programmer is leaving or your best artist is leaving, then you're fucked. Yeah, and so I think it's important to have a little money to make sure that this team of trusted people that believe in this idea can stick together, not worrying about shit. Now I have to do a double shift at the Reeperbahn serving cocktails in a little bikini or something like that, which is actually making good money and doesn't cost you too much time. But still, you know, you're not concentrated on developing games. So yeah, I would actually say, because we are in the same struggle right now with Retro Invasion, basically, that the game did pretty well on Greenlight, and we really love the title. We spent like already 40 months of concepting in it and 2 months of prototyping, but it's another 12 months to go. So that's around $500,000. And now what do? Publishing, Kickstarter, a little bit of all of it, investment, something, cut our payment down, do something else. It's really, really complicated because we want to make sure that we want to make the best title possible, and we are evaluating all the methods, and it's always about which title are you going to make, and so on, so on, so on. So I think it's a case-by-case decision, and yeah, and we still haven't really figured out what's our case. So,
thank you.
I think how many here have applied for the EU media program? Hand up. See, that's an amazing thing, actually. EU has a media program, and you can get funding for your game up to 150,000 euros for your game. That's not an amazing amount of money, but it's soft money. It's money for a game that you were going to make anyway. You have to look that up if you haven't applied for it. It's EU media program. Creative Europe, I think it's called. We've succeeded in getting money from that, from the EU I think in 3 times now. And yeah, filling out that application takes a bit of time and so on, but really you should do it. It makes all the sense in the world. Because that money can sort of put you over the first hurdle, like to get you going for a few months, which means that you can actually have a really decent prototype, which means that you can actually chase other money after that, going for an investor or talk to a publisher, like a publisher that wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole when you come with your idea about golfing in front of a whorehouse with bombs exploding in the background. But when they see the prototype, it actually looks really good. So yeah, anything goes. No money is dirty, as long as it's not dirty money, of course.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. What do you think about? Should we say thanks to these fellows?